Hi there and welcome to B5, the living body, and during today's lesson, which is the first in a two-part section, we're going to be looking at the respiratory system, and what we're going to look at today is gas exchange. Okay, so our objectives for our part one of the respiratory system, looking at gas exchange. By the end of this lesson you should know and understand how gases are able to exchange within organisms and how to measure the amount of gas exchange that occurs within humans. Anyway, I will see you at the end. All organisms need to be able to do respiration. Now, in order for this to happen, gas exchange needs to take place. Now, for some organisms, such as amoeba or earthworms, they do this by very simple diffusion in and out of the skin or through the cell walls. Now, they have a moist permeable membrane here that allows for that gas exchange to happen. Now, more complex organisms need to have a more specialized structure, and this could be a set of gills on a fish, or it could be a set of lungs on an animal. Now, gills only function in the water and they can't be used for breathing in air. That's why fish are restricted to living in water. And you can see here, I've just drawn this line here. This is how we expect the gills to look. But when we actually get into the structure and the function of them, we can see that they've got what we call a gill bar, which supports the gill filaments. So you can see the bars around here and then the filaments that are kind of coming out this way. Now, the filaments, the gill filaments, are very big and have a large surface area to allow for that diffusion of oxygen into the blood system. Now, more complex organisms such as tadpoles here, they also live in a water environment, so need to be able to get a good source of gas exchange. Now, as a tadpole, these actually have gills similar to a fish. So like a fish, they will take in water through the mouth and they will expel it through the gills, and they will take in the oxygen that way. Now, when they develop into frogs, they no longer have the gills. Now, what they have is they're able to diffuse oxygen through their skin, which allows gas exchange to occur inside their bodies. Now, this needs to be kept in a moist environment to allow for that gas exchange. So you always find frogs in those moist habitats. Now, with the respiratory system, there are several different processes that are connected with it. The first one we're going to look at is breathing. Now, breathing is sometimes referred to as ventilation. Now, this is where we have the process of air or water passes into or over the respiratory surface. So it is where air might go over the lungs or where water might go through the gills. Now, this allows for the gas exchange to occur. Now, the next process is inspiration, which I think I am to you guys, but there we go. Now, this is where we have the movement of air into the lungs. Now, this can be known as inhalation as well. The next step or next process is expiration or exhalation, and this is the movement of air out of the lungs. And then the last one you're probably more familiar with is respiration, and that's where the release of energy from the cells occurs. Now, we can have a look at a couple of diagrams here to show what happens during the breathing process. Now, this first one here is where we have inhalation. Now, you can see from the diagram that the air goes in. Now you can probably feel this if you have a go yourself, that your rib cage is raised and it increases in the volume and decreases in pressure. And here we've got the diaphragm that flattens out, and that's just below your lungs, just at the bottom of your rib cage. Now the second part is the expiration, and this is where the rib cage lowers. You get a decrease in the volume and an increase in the pressure, and you can see as well that the diaphragm relaxes. Now gas exchange in the lungs occurs in the alveoli, and this is where we have the air and the blood that mixes. Now what happens is oxygen enters the blood in the lungs and then leaves at the body tissue, and carbon dioxide which enters the blood at the body tissue and then leaves at the lungs. So we've got a picture here, or a diagram, of an alveoli. Now we can see in here that the oxygen comes in, and that diffuses from the alveoli into the blood, and then it goes around. So we've got oxygenated blood leaving the lungs here, and then we've got the deoxygenated blood entering here, and the carbon dioxide diffusing into here and then leaving. Now the alveoli has adapted to do its job in several different ways. The first one is the very big, massive surface area. It also has a moist, thin, permeable surface which is only 1 cell thick to allow for that gas exchange to occur. It also has a very good blood supply to allow that blood to get to provide the gas exchange. Now, when we look at the lung capacity, we can actually look at the 3 different parts of it. Now, when we normally breathe in and out, we have something called tidal air, which is the normal volume that we breathe in and out. So when we breathe, that is our tidal air. Now, we also have the vital capacity air. That's the maximum that we can actually take in. And then we have what we call the residual air. And the residual air is the volume of air that stays in the lungs even when we breathe out to our maximum. Now, if we look at the results of a spirometer trace, you can see we've got the tidal volume, which is where we breathe in and out. Okay, so it's that amount there. We then have the vital capacity, which is the maximum in and out. Any of you that are asthmatic have probably done one of those as a test. And then we have the residual air, which always remains in the lungs. Okay, so we've come to the end of our first, or part 1, on our respiratory system and looking at gas exchange. So we have looked at gas exchange in single-celled organisms or simple organisms that does it just via diffusion. We've had a quick look at the gills of a fish and how tadpoles and frogs will do their gas exchange. We've looked at the processes involved with gas exchange, and then we've looked at how the alveoli allows the gases to exchange with the blood, and then we've looked at the different parts of the breathing system. So we've looked at the tidal air, the vital capacity air, and the residual air. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.